Again, like with the GAR, the CIS droid army had a number of prefabricated bases and command installations. There was a model of forward command center regularly used by Separatist forces, which appears to have been a Trade Federation design. This command center was raised up on clawed legs and had an open deck, giving the commander using it a good view of the battlefield. It was crewed by several droids, which monitored computer readouts of data broadcast from other parts of the Separatist battlenet. There was also a much larger prefabricated garrison base that the Separatists frequently employed, meant to be built around a grounded C-9979 landing craft. This mobile command base could be disassembled and transported in a single C-9979, and when assembled, it consisted mostly of a high, square Durasteel wall with ramparts, 4 watchtowers, and a single gate. Inside, it was mostly just a flat, open assembly area containing the foot of the landing craft, a forward command center, storage for supplies and deactivated battle droids, and room for a number of tanks and light vehicles. Sometimes, these bases would come with theater-scale deflector shield generators, one of which could protect the entire base. These made these bases virtually impregnable, as they provided comprehensive protection from vehicles and artillery fire, while infantry would have a hard time getting through the walls of the base itself. Both the Separatist Command Center and the C-9979 landing craft were important parts of the droid army's battlenet. These acted as central command posts for large armies of battle droids, relaying signals from command ships in orbit to ground-based units. The C-9979 was also an essential part of the droid army's organizational structure. These enormous vessels could carry entire regiments of battle droids into combat, 4,368 of them in total aboard 11 MTTs and 28 PACs. They also carried 114 armored assault tanks or equivalent Separatist vehicles, as well as repair droids and 1,800 metric tons of cargo. Similar roles were played by the Techno Union's Hard Cell class transports and the Commerce Guild's Diamond class cruisers. The cargo capacities of these ships were different. The Hard Cell could carry just over 1,000 battle droids, but up to 650 Hellfire droids or equivalent vehicles, while the Diamond could only carry a few hundred infantry droids, but up to 600 homing spider droids and 2,400 dwarf spider droids. However, they both played similar roles as command nodes and landing craft for the droid army, and they were thus essential parts of the Separatist battlenet. For the Grand Army of the Republic, similarly important roles were played by the LAAT gunship and ATTE Walker, which acted as relays between command posts and frontline infantry. For the droid army, this role was instead filled by its troop transports. These were all ground-based, for the most part. Though the Confederacy did have gunships in the form of the HMP droid gunship, these weren't equivalent to the LAAT, since they were only sometimes used to transport troops and were more commonly used as heavy bombers. Rather, the droid army usually deployed its forces to a planet's surface using larger landing craft, from which armored repulsor craft would transport them across the battlefield. There were 3 kinds of these troop transports. The most famous was the Multi-Troop Transport, or MTT, a heavily armored repulsor craft equipped to transport entire companies of B-1 battle droids into combat, or smaller units of B-2s or droidicas. MTTs doubled as tanks in their own right, as their armor was extremely dense, allowing it to shrug off a lot of damage and even plow through enemy fortifications. They were also armed with 2 pairs of anti-personnel blaster cannons, which allowed them to mow down infantry to clear out deployment zones. Their main function, however, was a troop transport. In total, an MTT could carry and deploy 112 B-1 battle droids, 20 droidicas, or 12 B-2 super battle droids or BX series commando droids in an internal, configurable troop rack. These troop racks were protected during transit by the MTT's heavy armor, making these craft ideal for deploying droids in hot zones. The lesser-known platoon attack craft was essentially just a stripped-down MTT. These were essentially just the MTT's deployment racks, with the same carrying capacity on an open-air repulsor sled. These craft were unarmed and far less defensible, but they got the job done, transporting their cargo of battle droids into action. Typically, MTTs would lead the charge in large battles, while PACs would follow and deploy reserve troops, while the MTTs soaked up enemy fire. There was also the XT Beetle Transport, a much larger troop transport with a presumably much larger troop carrying capacity. We know nothing about these craft apart from that they moved on 10 sets of insect-like legs and that they were big and heavily armored. They were only ever seen on Auto Plutonia and only even in a ruined state. Presumably though, they played the same role in the Separatist battle doctrine as the other two troop transports did. All of these troop transports acted as BattleNet relays and mobile command posts for their attached companies, or for whatever unit an XD Beetle was meant to carry. Battle droids could hitch rides aboard these craft for armored transportation, and they could also use them to restock on supplies if they were low on, for example, ammunition. Troop transports also played an essential role in the droid army's recycling system, as they transported not only the fully functional droids, but also the remains of destroyed droids meant for reclamation. PK-4 worker droids were carried aboard MTTs, and possibly other craft, to assist in the sorting parts of destroyed droids after a battle was won, or even before a battle was won, as seen in the Battle of Naboo. Now it's time to move on to the droid army's arsenal of vehicles, and just like last time, we're going to start with the Watercraft, because yes, the CIS used actual boats sometimes. All of these ships were just aquatic repulsor craft, though they operated like a conventional water navy. The droid army's water navy primarily consisted of utility trawlers, transport ships, scout craft, destroyers, missile destroyers, and cruisers, just like the GARs. The Separatists' aquatic transports were the smallest and simplest of the ships in its water navy. They could carry up to 15 battle droids for transport across bodies of water. These didn't seem particularly efficient, especially since all the other Separatist transports had several times that carrying capacity, but whatever. The next largest was the scout ship, which came in two variants. The light version, which was simple and meant as cannon fodder, and a heavier version, which was faster and better armed. Separatist scouts acted more or less as frigates though, and as you could probably guess by their name, they also served in reconnaissance roles. Confederate destroyers were slightly larger ships tasked with destroying shore emplacements and enemy vessels using energy pummels. There were also the Confederate missile destroyers, larger anti-air ships that kept the fleet safe from incoming starfighters. These were especially effective against LAAT gunships, but they required the escorts of scouts to deal with any other threats. There was also the Confederate cruiser, a large ship meant to supplement ground forces by shelling shore emplacements. Lastly, we have the Trade Federation battleship, which, contrary to its name, was actually a water-based starfighter carrier, and the Ostrakoda class gunboat, which was essentially a